I'm Derek Galanis, and you guys are watching MMA Conspiracy Hour with my boy Todd Atkins and Miguel Iturrate. Miguel worked for Bodog, Hook and Shoot, Euphoria, and ADCC. You can find Miguel at MMA Collector 74 on YouTube. And if you want to hear what I got to say about the fight game, it's at Derek Galanis on TikTok or at Derek Galanis on Instagram. If you want to hear about crime, the new wave of organized crime, it's at Derek Meyer Galanis on TikTok and at Derek Galanis at Instagram.
All right, this is Todd Atkins. I'm here with Miguel Iturrate, and today we're going to discuss Conor McGregor's. He was found guilty of sex assault, and in Ireland. So, and this is a civil case. It wasn't the Irish authorities didn't bring criminal charges against him, although it started out as a criminal case. And so we're going to get into that. And as always, please subscribe, support the channel. Check out all our stuff and share it with people if you think it's good. That's just a way to support us and get us out there more. And Miguel, I kind of want to let you kind of open. I know you stayed the course in your opinion, but I want to hear your latest on this.
Well, I think from what I can tell, like you said, it's not a criminal case, so it's a civil case. So it's going to take him writing a check. We know that he's got a bottomless pit of money, basically. And from what I read, the fine is something like £248,000, which I think
euros.
No, is it euros in Ireland or is it pounds?
Euros. He's only going to end up paying like $200-something.
Okay. So yeah, if it was pounds, it might be closer to 350 or something like that. So either way, he can handle that with probably the money he carries around. You know what I mean? And in my experience, if I'm right about my psychological assessment of him, and that is that he's struggling with a few addictions and ego problems, then this consequence is not enough for him to not do this again. So, we're going to, and now he's in the news. And that's the part of it, you wonder at some point the escalation of things, it's major news. It's news across the country, and he put out a tweet or a social media post of some type. And it's funny. I saw somebody that said, you can't call them tweets anymore because it's X. So I'm calling them excretions.
X's.
But so he may have put out an excretion of him with his wife, and he's with the people that love him, and he's thanking people for supporting him. Not asking to be forgiven for letting people down again. And if we're right about the alcohol, drugs, and other addictions that he has, then when right now after he's been in court, he's with his family at home, he's most likely sober. So he probably feels a little bit bad, but as soon as, in a couple of days, when he starts to feel a little bit of anxiety, and he has another drink, and then he has another drink, and, maybe he stops, and then in another couple of days, he has 4 drinks, and, however his cycle goes, once he gets, back into that, maybe he's able to avoid it, but that's the Mystic Miguel part. I predicted he will not be able to avoid that trap again, not with a consequence. I saw a piece. It's hard to quantify how much money he has. Obviously, he doesn't have money like Bill Gates, but he's got way more money than any other MMA fighter on the planet. He's very wealthy, I mean, he's enough to be in the yachts and, that sort of wealth. Guys with $20 million in the bank don't have luxury yachts and things like that. So we know he's got $500 million. Anyway, I saw just a digress with a side story, but that's interesting. I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, the NASA scientist, that said it. He said, how much money does Bill Gates actually have? He said, well, comparing himself and his wealth to Bill Gates, he said, he took his net worth, and in his mind, he no longer would bend over to really, if he sees a penny on the street or a nickel or a dime, but he might pick up a quarter, you know. So taking his net worth at a quarter with Bill Gates' net worth, Bill Gates would have to come across $40,000 sitting on the floor for it to be worth it for him to pick up. And so McGregor's got he's not paying the consequence. $250,000 is like for you or me to pay a $25 fine. You know, for the average person to pay a fine of under $100, which shouldn't kill anybody. You know, it doesn't do any damage to him whatsoever. So at some point he's going to realize, I didn't really suffer. I can get out that mentality of I'm a big shot. I can get out of it. I'm special. Like, I envision myself or, whatever. He tells a story about the book and the power of the mind and stuff. He thinks he's a special individual and he's going to fall back into that trap. That's my belief. Um, he hasn't fought since July of 2021. Um, at this point, the other thing that was kind of notable, I'm assuming that some of the pictures that were shown was him in court recently. Um, he's looking with that kind of alcohol bloat. He's not looking healthy or in fight shape at all, which means he's going to need a prolonged training camp. It could be, Dana actually said he'd fight at the end of next year. So assuming that's the case, he's going to have been off for more than 4 years. And his birthday's in July as well. He'll be 37 when he comes back. And, you know, um, the 37-year-old heavyweight may still have some viability, still has some viability, but he's not a heavyweight. Maybe at this point, if he comes back as a middleweight, I mean, that jump from 170, where he's not the biggest guy anymore either, to 185 is big. If he decides to fight at 185, we can give you the example of, especially in his older age, we can give you the example of Pat Miletich. Miletich did okay at 185, but he wasn't a championship level fighter at 185 anymore. And if McGregor decides to actually come back at that weight class, um,
He's never going to fight again. Why? Yeah, we don't
yeah,
need to
you,
discuss
you
that.
know, you can, we've been on that wagon for a long time. I'm gonna, for speculative purposes, you can put together a case. Like, for example, if at some point, he were to have a revelation that, he has to stop partying and drinking and drugging and, womanizing and, I've mentioned it not on every single time we've knocked him, but if you throw in on top of steroid, stimulant drug, and alcohol addiction, sexual addiction, then he's maybe a gambling addiction too, because he likes some of those underground. Yeah, that's the other part of it is that he likes. That's one thing I read that was very interesting. Is the girl revealed that at some point, two men in baklavas, the black hoods, broke into her house and threatened her boyfriend and stuff. I guess it's speculation that was responsible for that. Obviously, he's going to deny it. But for this conversation, let's assume that he was behind it. He also enjoys that kind of gangster, that kind of bad boy lifestyle. You think back to the time he slapped that old man in a bar. that old man had some connections to the and here's the other part is that Irish type of
Yeah, apparently he had to
who
get himself out of that situation.
right, but and he did, and that's the part where that's a buzz too. That's a buzz too. Now those guys react to him. You know what I mean? Now he's known among those guys, and that's yet another problem. Um, and I'll present to you, some of those types of people, they all have a stereotype and a reputation. Like nobody wants to mess with the Russian mob. Nobody wants to mess with the yakuza. Nobody wants to mess with the snakeheads or the Vietnamese gangs. When they're at the top of their game, the Irish gangs are every bit as serious as those guys. You know what I mean? It's like they're not to be; those guys are not to be messed with. And he enjoys, at the end of the day, he was a poor kid that came up and made $1 million, and now he kind of has friends in all those places, high places, low places, or whatever you want to call it. And I think he likes that sort of thing. So, he's got the money. He hires two thugs to go to this girl's house and threaten her over the lawsuit and stuff like that. And she just revealed that after the trial was over. So all the Connor's not getting it. He's not getting that he's messing up. He's not accepting it, or he thinks he's above it, or he thinks he can buy his way out of it, or he actually may even be more confused and think he's not doing anything wrong. That he's a victim of in some way, that he's a celebrity and she wanted him, and everything here points to a bad sign, and everything, like you said, it points to the fact that he's not going to be uh, seen in the octagon again.
You know what's
If he were to
crazy is,
clean
and
up, if he were to clean up and get rid of all these problems, then maybe returning to the octagon is sort of potentially a solution, because you can't. Well, here's what and I have some experience with, I've got 9 years since I've had a drink, but it was a struggle. And the thing about it is that um you can't just stop and not fill the space with something. And a training camp and the focus of a fight, if you can tap that, would be something that will take up the time and the energy that he's now spending on pacing, the dragon or whatever you want
I
to
don't
call
think the
it.
UFC would want him in the octagon given the stuff that came out in this trial.
Well, talk about some details, because I think that the guys breaking into his girlfriend's house was the main part of the articles I read. That was the most interesting thing, and I know that you've got a lot more.
No, there's a lot of seedy stuff. Well, I mean, this is the first public admission of him using cocaine and things like that. His wife, he was at home on a Saturday night. His wife was pregnant at that time. His common law wife. They're not married, but she was pregnant at the time. So he's sitting at home and he decides he wants to go and party. I think they probably have an open relationship. I would imagine so. She's really is. Otherwise, she's just out of her mind. Because I don't see how anyone would stay otherwise. If they were in a
Well,
real
here's the thing: is
relationship, they would not.
yeah, no, it's definitely a broken relationship in some way. Now,
Yeah.
there are a couple of ways this could go. Um, if she tried to leave him, she might be afraid.
Oh yeah.
She might be afraid for Connor's reaction,
Right.
or you know, if I don't know how courts and the system works in Ireland. I don't know if divorce you automatically get half kind of thing. Um, but if she divorced him and he was all right with it, she'd get a chunk of money that she'd probably be able to live the rest of her life with. He could give her $20 million, and if you lead a normal life, then she can move on. Maybe even you know find another man, kind of thing. So I do think that there's a certain element of fear there, and then there's a certain element of sometimes when you're in a relationship, even a toxic one, um, you don't want to fail. And she may have some type of psychological trap like that where, she did, Irish people, I'm no expert, but I did go to a Catholic school with very close Irish friends. And if religion plays a part in it, she may be against divorce.
True.
Divorce may actually be something that she's that's she doesn't want to go through. She doesn't want to have to explain to her parents. It depends. He- uh, you know, uh, being like afraid of a divorce for religious reasons is more rare in the United States now than when I was a kid. That's kind of faded into the past. But in Ireland, where religion, the Protestants and the Catholics still play a big part of some people's identities. If she's in that, then very much so, she might be there because of not, religious reasons. She doesn't want to go through a divorce, doesn't want to explain to her parents or her pastor that she's going to divorce this guy, or,
I think the
um,
pastor would understand. He's
yeah,
given his public,
it's,
yeah.
it's, yeah, I agree. It's hard to see, Kobe Bryant, rest in peace. He got caught having an extramarital affair, and his wife stayed. And his wife also could have probably sued him and been given a very large portion of money enough to live the rest of her life, but she stayed. What was her motivation?
Right, but
So,
Connor's known to run around with women all the time. It's not a one-off.
I know I understand. I would venture to say that the NBA players, um, they're very young, good-looking guys. Kobe was, a star on a bunch of different levels. He was mean player and a very focused player, but he had his charisma. I know girls that liked him. Like,
Right, but this isn't something where
and
Kobe did it again and again and again and again, and he's getting caught,
he
caught,
didn't
caught,
get.
caught. Very
I'm thinking
different.
he didn't get caught. But you're right.
Yeah,
He only had one incident that was public, and Connor's just is had multiple. So it is a different story. Um, you know, I bet Kobe got laid more, but that's neither here nor there.
yeah,
That's neither here nor there. Um, but yeah, that's the other part of it is that Kobe would have been sober. I'll stop with the Kobe comparison because it's not
yeah. It's
really.
not fun.
But Kobe's an athlete. He's a sober guy, and Connor has gotten to the point where his alcohol and drug use, I think, is getting sloppier and sloppier, and he's getting caught more. And you can count on an incident every you know year, roughly, or something like that. There's always a story like that. And maybe he didn't go to court for slapping the guy in the Italian hotel, for slapping the old man. That got resolved, the way gangsters resolve things. The incident in Florida where he took a guy's cell phone. Um, Also, I don't recall him going to court for that. Now he's in court. It's escalating and he's getting sloppier. There have been other girls and other problems that he's had. Um, one of those things, a wake up call, if they had said, you're going to have to pay $50 million for this girl, that might have been a wake up call. If his wife left him, that might be a wake up call, but he's not getting that wake up call.
They did say that in court he was visibly, like, he was breathing heavily, and he was shaken when they were reading the verdict. So that was interesting. But also, I think the facts of this, like, I don't know if you know, like, he went out to party with a group of women already. He had already, and the only reason he got in contact with this girl is because they went home. So he just looked up another girl on Instagram that he had been messaging and went and got her, you know? And he admitted to having rough sex with her twice without a condom. Remember, he's got a pregnant wife at home, you know? And the guy that was with him, James Lawrence, he also admitted to having sex with this woman, Nikita Hand.
Right. And the woman
And
says she doesn't even remember.
he wasn't found guilty of anything. Conor was, not him. Because he was the second. Conor's verdict was actually read first. His was read second. So I find it interesting that he was found guilty and James Lawrence was not.
Yep. I think too, the girl actually said that with the second guy that she doesn't even recall that. So she
Mhm.
was, eh, eh, the whole, the whole thing is one of those things where it really there's no positives that you can take away with it. Um, you know, when Dana hit his wife, he kind of got away with it, and now we'll see if Conor gets away with it. We know he doesn't need to fight, so like even if his UFC contract were to get canceled or he were to never fight again, that's actually not enough of a blow. Not for us to say, oh, he's going to figure it out. He's never going to do that again. So now it's just let's sit tight and see if before his birthday he has another blow up or incident where he winds up in the crosshairs again.
The one thing I found interesting about his statement is he didn't apologize to anybody. He didn't say, hey, I'm sorry for being in this situation or, I want to apologize to my family. He may have done that privately, but it would have been good to at least take some responsibility of some sort in that statement. If I
Yeah,
was
no, he did.
advising him, I would have said, look,
Right.
even if you don't want to admit you're guilty, you could say, look, I take responsibility for being in the situation. Shouldn't have been, that kind of thing. He didn't do
Yep.
that.
And I agree with you. I agree with you that it is a nuance, but he said, thank you to everybody for supporting me. That's not an apology.
Right. That's all he
And I
cares
think you're
about.
right in making the distinction. And I think that goes back to playing back to if he's an addict, because he's going to say that the cocaine, you said he admitted using, he's going to say that the cocaine is recreational and not habit, right?
Hmm.
But he's exhibiting, some very bad signs, including, I think, we've talked about how some guys just get away with things. That interview that he did around the Roadhouse movie, where he was twitching and really screwed up on something, I think it's Jake Gyllenhaal, is that the guy's name?
Hmm.
Okay, and you could see Jake kind of looking at him like, "Oh my God," Jake's a Hollywood person. He's seen cocaine use. You know what I mean? So he had to know. He had to know, and there's no hiding it. That what he did there is the sign of an addict, because a recreational user would say, "All right, I'm going to wait till after the interview to party." I'm sure that interview was contrived. If you're going to get him and Jake together in a room and they were sitting side by side from what it looked like to me. Um, if you're gonna get them together, that's something that it wasn't like, oh, hey, let's do an interview, and and Connor was already high or whatever. That interview, it was scheduled, and they knew to show up and stuff, and he showed up messed up, and all those things, and he paid no consequences for it. People, there were rumors and people talked about it, and this, that, and the other thing, but nothing of any, no consequences. And without consequences, he's not going to get it. And we've already talked about painfully obvious to me that he doesn't have a mentor, that he doesn't have anybody who he listens to. Like Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson went off the rails dozens of times, but if you look at it, it was after the death of Customato, before Customato died, and Customato was irreplaceable to him. None of the other people had stepped up. Don King, you know, any of the other trainers or anything like that had the rapport and the connection that Customato did. But Customato took a kid from Brooklyn who was basically a thug and kept him on the straight and narrow, took him, to the top of the game, trained him to get to the top of the game. And he didn't go off the rails until that guy passed away. Well, Conor doesn't have a custom model figure.
Mm-mm. He
And
doesn't have
that's,
anybody who's telling him what to do.
yeah. And, I don't know what the answer to this is because, I just don't know. But where's his mother and father?
Oh, his mom was
He's
there with him in court.
okay. And his father's not in his
I don't
life?
believe he was there. It was his mom and his sister. She's got kind of a strange spelling. I think it's Afa is how you say her name, or it's kind of
Okay.
a strange spelling of it. But his mom,
Okay.
his sister, and Dee Devlin, his partner, were there with him for the verdict.
Okay. So his mom is, not able to influence him.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just I think a lot of the stuff that came out in terms of it's pretty bad for his image. You know, really bad. I think and that's where I think it'll be interesting because yeah, I know the UFC picked up what's his face, Greg Hardy, who had a pretty violent domestic abuse uh, charge,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of like just seedy, nasty stuff in this, And the other thing I would say about James, what did I say his last name was? Geez, I forgot. James, the other guy that was with him.
Hmm.
he When Conor McGregor got arrested that night, he pled the fifth 150 times during his interrogation. James came in the next day of his own volition and admitted to having sex with this girl twice. So big contrast between the two of them, you know.
Yeah. He got arrested on the night that it happened.
I think he got arrested like the next day
Then,
or something.
either he still has some residual effects of the drugs and the alcohol, or he's got a hangover and he's in recovery. But if that's the most uncomfortable moment he has, how many people with a hangover have said, "I'll never drink again," and then they're drinking by the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm
So
not
he,
certain of what
again,
day it was. I mean, I should look that up, but it wasn't the night, obviously, because that was, that was when everything was going on. But it was soon after. I know that for a fact. This is in 2018 is when it actually happened.
yeah, it's unbelievable. You know, um, he's at the point where, you know, uh, I don't know, I don't know exactly how to express exactly what I'm feeling, but like I don't want to say he doesn't deserve the money because, but he's not handling the money well. You know what I mean? It's like he maybe has business people that are taking care of business, so he's got income streams so his money doesn't go away. But he's not handling the money well. And at some point, I'm not saying that he's going to wind up destitute because he has boatloads of money. But, what could happen is, at some point, you could be looking at a disaster waiting to happen. You know, the next time, it may not be raped, but the next time, he may get behind the wheel of a car and smack it into a wall at 140 miles an hour, and that's the last we hear of him.
No, if he doesn't get treatment, I think he's gonna burn. There's no doubt
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, and he's different than Mayweather in that Mayweather is again, Mayweather's a guy that always like we know that Mayweather burns $100 bills in strip joints, and that he's got more money maybe or equal money or whatever, but he doesn't have drug addictions, alcohol addictions. He's avoided all that. He'll be around people that do that, but he's able to keep himself clean and sober, and that makes a big difference, especially when you seem to be like Conor, where everything's gone right for Conor, right? So why wouldn't he think that, hey, I can handle doing drugs, drinking? I'm different than other people. I can handle it. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a drug addict. You know, Sex addiction's even more complicated, I think, to come to the conclusion that you're an addict of that. But like I said, that's the most difficult one to kick too, you know. So yeah, I see him, unless he gets help, possibly, yeah. At this point, forget about fighting again. He might end tragically before he's 40.
Yeah, and just for the record, I know it mentioned James Lawrence. That's who it was. James is a friend of McGregor's for a long time. He's known him since he was young, and so he was the other one involved in this. And I'd have to look and see. I don't know if he was the one who provided the cocaine or if it was McGregor, but you know, obviously one of them had it, and that's how the girls end up taking it when they're in the vehicle heading to the hotel that McGregor paid for.
Yeah, you wonder about that because I guess the police are overwhelmed, and I don't know what the excuse is, but if cocaine was used, I think it behooves. For example, I was just thinking today too about the Hunter Biden situation where they found cocaine in the White House, and they just never. You mean to tell me there's no video of that? Because the White House has to have video cameras everywhere,
Right.
so they have to know if it was Hunter or if it was someone else, but it's never come out either way. They just let it go away and die, right? So now
Mm-hmm.
Connor's on cocaine. It's like, where'd you get it? Who's dealing it to you? In some cases, in the extreme cases, you got to die for them to go after him. Like in the Michael Jackson case, they actually decided to track down who's giving him, I forget what it's called, but anesthesia basically. And I forget what the actor's name is from Friends that died just recently. Um, but he was a case where I think it may have been ketamine. But his was a case where they actually went and found the doctors and stuff like that, or the dealers. In his case, I think it was a doctor dealer kind of thing. Um, that so you actually have to die for them to say, okay, where are you getting these drugs? But for right now, Connor, in 3 days when the bite hits him again, he can call the same guy and get drugs distributed to him again, and nobody's, you know, investigating or looking at any of that stuff. So it's just seems to be a glitch in the system as well. And I'm not, I think me and you might be a little different because of life and life experiences. Like I'm not like a total anti-drug person or anything like that. Um, you know, but laws are laws. You know what I mean? It's like if you're going to have laws, they should be enforced, or else everything becomes just much more of a farce. If cocaine is going to be, it's legal in some countries. Ireland, if they're not going to investigate, Ireland should just make it legal. You know, but it should be looked into. Like, who's giving this guy cocaine? He's a big star. He's a big celebrity, and now he's making a spectacle of himself in a bad way. He's doesn't seem to be, uh, heading towards trying to solve the problem himself. So somebody should be looking to cut him off. And we know it's not going to be his family or his mentor because that doesn't exist. So, the authorities maybe should say, who's dealing with this guy? And raid the guy's house, take his stash and tell him, look, get back in business, keep a much lower profile because if you keep giving it to this guy, he's going to smack into a wall. It's going to be a big news thing and you're going to go down. That seems to be the way those things go. But, nobody, I don't think Connor's going to have a lack of availability all of a sudden. And that's the kind of thing that just a time bomb.
Right. Yeah, and I one thing that we should also add, like the MMA community has been speculating that he was using cocaine for a long, long time. That's always been. But this is the first public confirmation admission out of his own mouth that he is a user. So I think that's important. I think that's notable. It's easy to
Yeah,
continue using when no one officially knows, but now it's out there. This is part of a mark on him. And I think it's interesting. I want to credit Nicole, the talent, who I was listening to her YouTube channel because she has all the facts and stuff. She's a journalist in Ireland. And, they seem to say that really he doesn't have a good reputation there either. So, but I do find it interesting that this is the first public admission and how people might react to that.
you know, if you go back and look, and we've covered the subject of Conor and these problems on several podcasts, but this guy has a cocktail going on, a mix. So, and again, this is just my opinion, but alcohol is a worse addiction than cocaine. Cocaine makes you a little more alert. Sometimes it makes you unable to perform. So the sex addiction could become a little bit of a problem. But alcohol is the one where you could black out and be moving and taking actions, driving a car, trying to seduce a woman, and you will not even remember it. You will not even be in a state. So maybe part of the admission is a little bit of a like he you can remove the cocaine from Conor right now, and everything we said in this podcast, I think, would still apply. If he keeps drinking, if he keeps the sex addiction, perhaps there are other drugs that he uses, uh, recreational drugs. Um, Steroids, I think, are a problem. If you look at what he looked like in court, he also looked like in being in the business of MMA, I've seen a few of these types of guys, and that is guys that do steroids but don't do enough exercise, so that you do bloat and get kind of like a sheen of fat on you, and his face is not an athlete's face anymore.
Yeah, it's a. I'm just wondering how the American MMA, because that's where the bread is buttered still in MMA, how they're going to look at this. I know Khabib took shots at him already, called him a hypocrite, said, all these kind of things, said justice is going to find you one day, you know. And Jake Paul, even, I thought, for once, said something that made, he says Dana White hits his wife, Conor McGregor, you know, assaults women, but I'm the bad guy.
Yeah. Who I saw too. Yeah, Jake is a little bit of a different subject. I guess he's getting paid. You know, I don't agree with a record of 11-1 for in boxing as a professional for the type of competition he's got. I think especially the Tyson fight should have been labeled an exhibition. You know, um, uh, I think that especially once you see the performance and you understand the bells and whistles of Tyson being 58, that the matchmaking on that match should never have been approved by the boxing commission. So it shouldn't count on his record or
Oh,
anything
if it
like
was
that. But
real, it wouldn't have been approved. They wore 14-ounce gloves, 2-minute rounds. They did stuff to shenanigans to get it approved, in my opinion.
yeah, and the boxing commission should be, more stringent than that. They shouldn't allow those exceptions, and they should look at, a 58-year-old with Michael's history. Mike has a lot of miles on his body. One in the ring and two outside the ring. So it doesn't surprise me that the stamina wasn't there. Um, there's also the danger, at some point, at the very least, Jake Paul it hits hard. It's funny, Gervonta Davis said that he would trash Jake Paul, and Gervonta is probably half the size of him at this
I think
point.
he meant in public, not. He said if he sees him, not if we get in the ring. And
I saw Jake.
Davis is someone who's known for doing that to people.
Yeah, no, I understand that, and Davis is a little guy, but he's up there among the most dangerous guys in the world right now. But Jake Paul, I saw his response too, and Jake took it as if he was challenging him to a match. And Jake said, "Gervonta Davis needs me,"
No,
and
I don't. I think he misunderstood the message. I think.
yeah, I think you got to consider. I don't think Gervonta's cashed a $20 million payday yet. Like so, like his Jake's opponents do. So I think that's how Jake decided to take it. We're off the subject of Conor,
Right, right.
but yeah, I also saw some interesting emails and exchanges there. People are going to be let down by Conor, and then you mentioned, how the world is going to react. I think that it's 50-50. I think that there are people who are going to move on. There are a lot of people out there that, you know, have some semblance of considering addictions not a problem, or have addictions themselves, or are willing to, ignore it. The example I'm thinking of is I saw some social media posts today. One of the BKFC guys that is helping them run in Europe. I'm thinking, right
Yeah,
around the
that's
time,
another thing. McGregor's very visible at BKFC.
yeah, and
Yeah.
the BKFC people, on the day that he gets convicted of rape, the BKFC Europe guy puts out a social media post that says, "Could you imagine having better partners than me? Dave Feldman and Conor McGregor," and it's a picture of him with the two of them. It's like, yeah, you know, one of them's a rapist or a sexual assaulter or whatever
Hmm.
nuance you want to put there. It's like that's a social media post that he's not going to regret it that way. Like like it's going to cost him his company or whatever. But it's a
Pathetic timing.
misplaced.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pathetic
exactly. It's a
timing.
misplaced social media post to be talking about him as a great partner, and all he's done is be visible. You know, yeah. I don't see, like I said, some guys like that have the career, but BKFC's numbers haven't really shot up. Man,
It
look,
will
it's
be
no their
interesting to see
fault.
though if BKFC pulls back because he's very visible at he was that maybe they might say, all right, you have some ownership here, but maybe not be so visible.
Yeah, yeah. Here's the thing: is what are they going to do? Tell him you can't come to the event?
Oh, he could come to events, but I mean, where he's almost looks like the co-promoter, where he's getting in the
Yeah,
ring and saying,
but
let's
but
do this, let's do that.
but here's the risk. Here's the risk you run. If he goes to an event, what comes after the event?
Right,
Usually,
right.
it's a post-fight party.
Hmm.
If it's
Hmm.
not, if there is no post-fight party, then a guy like Connor would be like, let's make our own party.
Hmm.
So it's actually risky to have him at events because that's where the ego kicks in. He goes to an event, everybody instantly recognizes. That's and he should be asked to not come to events. That would be the right thing to do
Yeah, it would
for
be.
him, and for the company.
Yeah, I don't think they'd
But
go that far, is what I meant.
yeah,
Yeah,
you know why? Because Feldman is not a mentor. It's not Feldman's job to be a mentor, but
right.
Feldman, as the owner of the company, as the main owner, should have the power to say, dude, I got to ban you from events. You can't come. You're a mess. But he's not going to because of that Connor aura. And even if he did, would Connor listen to him? Connor doesn't listen to anybody. We've already repeated that, multiple podcasts, right? So yeah, the BKFC is a business that now, like I said, and that's why the social media post is one of those things where half his fans think he's cool. Still,
Yeah.
some of them, like will have your sensibilities of a, you know, for lack of a better word, a good person or whatever. People should be offended by his conduct.
Yeah.
Women, he should have lost all his fan base of women.
Hmm.
But it's a weird and convoluted world. So yeah, that's that would be did you see Game of Thrones?
I didn't watch it. I mean, I tried to watch it, but it was just I couldn't get
Okay,
into it.
no problem. There's a
Maybe I'm
scene.
one of the
There's a
few
scene.
people.
There's a scene where the queen is being shamed, right? So she's actually at uh, a church building, and across town is the castle where she lives, and she's forced to walk naked to her castle, and everyone's yelling shame, shame, shame at her. It's a scene that people will remember if they watched it. And that's literally what should happen to Connor. Like, Connor should be shamed, or if you're not going to yell shame. It's like when he walks into a bar, everybody ignore him. Don't give him the attention he wants and craves. But there's still going to be people. Oh, I still love you. Oh, come on, let me buy you a drink. He's not drinking, right? He's not. So yeah, there's going to be some people that he's turned off, but there's going to be an equal number of people that defend him, that say he's a victim, make excuses for him, think he's still cool. So if it was across the board, it might have an impact. But those people are going to keep him on the track that we've been predicting this whole podcast.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing I think needs to be public. He needs to go into rehab or something and make that known, that's happening. Because like I said, if he doesn't, he's already past the point of no return, I think.
Here's the thing with what addiction does. Okay, addiction is a tricky enemy. At some point, he should go back. I forget what the name of the book, but he says that he read a book that talks about visualization and about, kind of willing yourself to and it motivated. I forget the name of the book. Something like the gate or the house or the cot, I forget what it's called. He should go back and read that again and start visualizing himself as a sober person without all those things. And he needs to get it in his head and in his heart that he's beyond and finish with that. Because if not, he could go to rehab, do 28 days, then he could come out and he could do 4 months worth of sober time where, he's with his wife and he's cooking for her, and he's taking care of her, and he sees her through having the child, and they bring the child home. And then, when the child's
They
two
have
months
four
old,
kids.
yeah, and the other kids, he's taking care of them, taking them to the park.
Those are the
He
ones I think
spends,
who lose the most. If they
oh,
are
yeah.
in an open relationship and D is tolerating this, yeah, it's not affecting the two of you apparently. But if they have to, they're going to grow up and see this stuff one day, and it's going to be embarrassing for them.
And they're probably going to inherit enough money that they can do whatever kind of behavior they want, and they're getting an example of, yeah, you're not preparing your kids. But my point is
Yeah,
he could do the rehab. He could take those kids to the park. He could be a good dad for a few months. He could see his wife through this pregnancy, bring the child home, cook for her, clean for her. Everybody's going to think Connor's doing great. But if he hasn't gotten into his head that he has to move on, and he hasn't bought into that completely and wholeheartedly, then 6 months later, when his wife's back on her feet and she says, she's more taking care of the baby and is not, kind of, being taken care of herself and still like that. And Connor goes, I'm going to go to a BKFC event. He's going to come home shit faced again. he's going to come home shit-faced again
Oh
because
yeah, no doubt about it.
it's something that you've got to have an epiphany moment. And his epiphany moments are not there, not in
Maybe
this
him
case.
finally losing in court. It might be.
Again,
Had he won again, he'd say, you know, no, no criminal charges in this. You know, I'm
yeah,
good.
losing in court could be, but it didn't appear to be. You mentioned the lack of an apology. I mentioned that the fine isn't enough to affect him.
Right. I want to say something about that though. Also, Nicole Talent and them, they said there's going to be a hearing, I think Tuesday, to determine who's going to pay her legal fees, and those are going to be astronomical. Probably, she estimated 900,000 to $1 million. Still not a lot in McGregor's case. He could pay for
No,
that,
no,
no problem.
no. It's
But
not
there
enough.
is going to be a hearing to determine who's going to pay her fees.
Yeah, and McGregor. If McGregor should just pay that. I would just step up and pay it because it's a no skin off my ass with the amount of money I have, and it calms her down and starts to put this problem behind him, and then just start looking forward to the other problem. It's
He
not
won't do that.
it wouldn't be a good sign, but you
He
know
could have settled this out of court and never had gone through this.
that's the other interesting part. That's the ego. I think he thought,
Yeah.
and I remember in certain times that when we were analyzing this before they went to court, we thought that because she had sex with the other guy as well, or and whatever. We know more details and things, but we thought that he might be found not guilty.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching other people talk about it, and it just seemed like maybe her stories were off, and like saying she didn't remember having sex with the other guy, even though he had came to the precinct the next day and said, yeah, after McGregor got arrested, you know, and so he was very open about that fact, So there's some people are seeing, oh, you're a party girl, you're texting Conor McGregor on Instagram, and this is what you wanted, you know.
Yep.
She sent him some pictures. I don't know if they were, if they're what kind of pictures they were, but yeah, she was clearly, you know, leading him on and whatnot, you know.
That's the part
And she
where
had a boyfriend. She had a
right,
boyfriend too. So
Connor's what you want. Like for example, let's call her Connor's wife. Because there's Commonwealth, but they have kids together and stuff. So in the case of my wife, if I'm a married man. If I got a picture from another woman, like I have pictures of my mom. I have pictures of family. I have pictures maybe of coworkers or older. But if I got a picture of a young girl or a girl with like a cutesy email, just smiling, not to mention nudes or more vulgar things that sometimes get around there, but just smiling, my wife would be like, "What the hell are you doing? What the hell is that?" But again, obviously, what it appears here is that he uses Instagram to get laid.
yeah,
He uses Instagram that
and it's
you
just
know
regular people. These people aren't even wealthy people. These are
right.
random. These are like just people that you and me, like middle class or whatever. They're just
And
regular Joes, and he's hanging. He's trying to get them. It's weird.
men have weird standards,
Yeah, he could
especially
get much better probably than he's going after.
yeah, but it's more work,
Yeah,
What it seems like to me from
yeah,
what you mentioned, so he's out with some friends and some girls and stuff, and the girls go home, and he's left there buzzed and horny,
yeah.
So he goes to his Instagram, finds her, and she reacts. Let's say she said, "Oh, Connor, I'd love to, but I'm in Scotland this weekend with my family, on a trip. I can't." You just, scroll to the next one.
Yeah.
That's what would have happened there. It's not like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I'm done. I'm going home for the day." He wasn't going to stop.
Right.
So when she was the first one that reacted, that's where he went. But if she hadn't done that, he would have moved on to the next one, or gone to the next bar over and found somebody or done something, you know?
Yeah, usually celebrities try to avoid meddling with regular people because it's those are the kind of people who can get them a lot of trouble. Those kind of people that would try to sue him and what. But it seems like this is who he tries to go after. It's just kind of
You know,
strange.
celebrity, it's funny when you're an NBA player nowadays, because in the 70s, the NBA was, you know, the playoffs were shown on reruns. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the league had a lot of cocaine problems and drug problems and stuff like that. And once some of those guys
When
became
Lenny
elder
Bias
statesmen,
overdosed,
that was '86.
that was a big part of that. That
And
kind of
you're
started
right.
the whole just say no drug drug war
Well, and,
that
and, and
Ronald
in
Reagan
particular with
started.
the NBA, but in particular with the NBA, there are guys now, older players, that will mentor the younger players.
Yeah.
It, and that goes not only down to, you know, they get a lot of these guys don't even go to college anymore, and not that college is the be all end all, but a lot of these guys, their studies have been more dedicated towards the basketball in that part. So they need help managing their money. Now they've got money, they need help managing their money. And there is programs that help these guys get that stuff figured out, you know. And the guys that are successful are the guys that buy into that much more. That takes listening to a mentor. And that's one of Connor's big problems. And he's
Yeah.
got nobody who's guiding him. So now he's a basically, I don't know him personally or anything like that. But he just seems like a dummy that got lucky with a lot of money. You know what I mean? And obviously blessed on the athletic side and on that end, but I don't think he's that smart. I've seen much smarter fighters than him in terms of especially behavior outside the ring and stuff. There are other signs that he's more lucky than smart.
And he had a lot of enablers along the way, like his trainers and people like that who never set their foot down and said, "Look, we're done with you." You know.
Yeah, I've given the example. I'll give it again. John L. Sullivan, who is he was a bare knuckle boxing champion in the 1880s, and he actually was the champion who transitioned to gloves. So this was the era where bare knuckle was finishing, and they were starting to use gloves. And for one of his last couple of fights, um, he was looking for somebody to train him. I think he was fighting Jack Kilrain, and it's a famous fight because Kilrain was a Brit, so it's a guy coming over across the pond, and that's where world championships come from. Is now he's now fighting another American kind of thing, and he was a guy named William Muldoon, who's more of a wrestler. I think William Muldoon had a couple of boxing matches. William Muldoon was also a guy that was into physical, taking care of your body. He rode horses and stuff into his 80s back then, and understood the beginnings of what would be taking care of yourself as a diet. To give you an idea, William, this is the 1880s, right? So there's no television, there's no anything like that. Sometimes what William Muldoon would do for money is he would paint his entire body white and stand at a party like a statue, and people would think it's a statue, almost like a Greek
Yeah.
god kind of thing. You know what I mean? Um, just kind of like a forgotten, that kind of thing doesn't happen like that anymore.
Yeah, there are guys in
Um,
Waikiki who paint their whole body gold and do that. Like,
yeah, I was thinking gold and but that's a little more flashy than the white looking to be like a marble statue, like to the Roman god or the Greek god kind of thing. So he was, and he was also a wrestler. He also was the first uh, boxing commissioner in New York. So he was a respected figure back then. And his home in upstate New York is now the Bare Knuckle Boxing Hall of Fame. And so the story goes that Sullivan knew he needed somebody, and this guy said to him, "Okay, I'll take care of you, and we'll get you in shape for this fight. But you're gonna do things my way." And Sullivan had a Connor streak in him. You know what I mean? And in that upstate New York town, he would get locked down and put to bed at 8 or 9 o'clock. And the story goes that one day, just with the anxiety of alcohol and stuff like that, and um, he broke curfew, took off, and went to the bar. You know, it's a small town, so I don't know how many bars there were, but it wasn't hard to track him down. And that's exactly what Muldoon did. Muldoon went to the bar, dragged him out of there, took him back home and put him away. You see what Connor doesn't have there.
Yeah,
Somebody,
compared to like Tommy Morrison, Morrison's trainers used to say they would have to go and peel him off of bar stools and stuff often,
yeah, yeah,
but they never said enough is enough, you know.
yeah. But at the very look, married with a wife with a kid, and with kids and a baby on the way. If you're not home by 12, by whatever that time is, but this sounds like you got a hotel room. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It sounds like
he went out early. This was real late, like
yeah.
yeah,
So at some point, his wife, it's 11 o'clock. He's not home. 12 o'clock. He's not home. His wife should have somebody to call who can say, "All right, I know where he is. I'll go get him,"
good luck.
and then a person can bring him back one way or another. And he doesn't have that type of influence.
Yeah, that
What
person
he
probably get beat up if they tried.
Yeah, what he has, the influences he has are, hey man, I got a bag of Coke here. Let's do it. Let's have another round of drinks. That's the kind of person he reacts to. Somebody who shows up and says, Connor, it's time to go home. Who the fuck are you? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
We've seen
yep.
his lines. We know, you know, his act is limited.
And she must not have any impact on him because
Yeah, it's not her, and she has
zero.
nobody she can turn to. You know what I mean? So yeah, he's alone. He's the most recognizable person in any room he's in. To 99.9%. You know, maybe one day he's in a room with Prince Harry or something. And that hasn't happened. But every once in a while, Ronaldo or someone like that, if he gets in a room with people like Beckham or football players or something like that, he's the second most famous person in the room. But without exception, that's the exception. Normally, he will be everywhere he goes, the most famous person in the room.
Yeah.
So anybody
Apparently,
who
his
comes
niece
in,
broke down crying in the courtroom when they had. I wonder if that. I doubt it, but visibly him seeing the effect he had on his family because they were there having to support him. His mother was there holding one arm, he was holding the other. They're kind of with him when they're reading the verdict. And when they read it, his niece apparently just broke down crying like loudly. So maybe you would think something like that, where it's like, wow, my behavior is affecting my family, and not just me or my spouse, whatever, if he even cares about her, but it's affecting people outside of that now.
yeah, I don't think that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that's enough because those people, um, my opinion is that tough love, like his mother should cut him off. His mother should say, Connor, I'm done. You're my son. I love you, but your behavior, I can't tolerate. I can't be around you. That might have the effect. But she's there hugging. Oh, Connor. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But how I would approach it is, if I were his family and if I wanted to make an impact, is I'd be hard on him,
Yeah,
and
and you would think the public shaming of her. It's different when people know what's going on, but it's not public. Now she's had to go through it publicly, and stand there and have people see her come in the courtroom, and you know, that's embarrassing. You know, that's a
yeah,
different level of embarrassment and shame.
right. But yeah, but Connor's not the one who. Connor should be embarrassed and ashamed also, but he doesn't. That's not in a couple of just social media posts and things that he's put out afterwards. That's not what's on his
Nope,
mind.
that's not him. That's the, but I think that's still the ego and the alcohol, cocaine type addiction person. They don't
Yeah,
see that they're doing anything wrong.
yeah, yeah. It's the more the victim mentality, or
Yeah.
feel sorry for yourself that you got caught,
Yep.
not feel sorry for yourself that you're an addict.
And that you're affecting other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
crazy. It's a shame that all this has happened. But it's kind of stuff that I think most people expected. Over time.
yeah,
So even though we've talked about this a lot, at the end of the day, really, I think it's what a lot of people expect of him. And this is the first time he's lost in public in
yeah.
getting in
We'll see.
trouble part of things.
Like I said, Mystic Miguel. We'll see another episode of this.
Oh, I think so too, for sure.
So when we get to that one, we'll talk about it again. For
He's
now,
already had others after this. This was 2018. So he's already been in trouble since then.
I wonder when he knew he was going, because 2018 is 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So how long does the court process take? He should have.
It's like America. Someone can take a long time. Guys can
Years.
sit in jail for years and years and years before they ever go to trial.
Yeah, it's just that's a weird thing. That's a weird thing. So, yep, there you go. That's it. Conor McGregor in the news again for not fighting.
For all the wrong reasons. That's what it is.
For sure.
Yeah, Miguel, as always, great insights, and it's always great talking to you. And people, like I said before, we appreciate you guys supporting this channel, and like our video, subscribe, share it with other people in the community. And, as always, we appreciate you watching. And until next time, take care.
Hey, I'm Jacob Cooperman, and you were watching the MMA Conspiracy Hour with Todd Atkins and Miguel Iturrate. Todd has been involved in covering combat sports since the 1990s, and Miguel has match-made over 200 different events amongst various promotions worldwide. Please subscribe and be on the lookout for future episodes. As for me, you can check me out at Gloves Up on YouTube and Coop TV with 3 O's on Instagram. Thank you guys, and enjoy the episode.